Hello artists! Today I'm going to show you how to paper mache your tinfoil and newsprint animal form that you made. First, I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to get some newspaper and I'm going to show you how to tear the newspaper into strips. I'm going to open the newspaper up flat like this and take a couple of sheets at a time. I'm going to put it vertical. The edge has these little perforated notches. And you can decide how thick or thin you want to make your strips. If you have a bigger sculpture, you can go a little bit thicker making your paper strips, but if you have a smaller sculpture, you definitely want to have some smaller strips. So I'm going to go for about a medium amount of a strip. So I'm just going to tear down the length of that paper like this. This is a pretty fun and fast process, but it's one of the joys of doing paper mache. So I'm just going to do a few of those, but you get the idea. So if I have some strips now like this, I can decide if I want to make them even thinner. I can tear them again, and I can also make them smaller. This is a really large strip to work with a paper mache piece that's this small. So I'm going to go ahead and make my strips into a more manageable size for the sculpture I'm doing. So I'm going to put those aside because I've already made a lot of strips to use. So I'm going to keep that in a pile right over in this corner that I can use while I'm paper macheing. Before I start paper macheing, I want to have a piece of newspaper or a mat down on my work table because paper mache gets a little bit messy. So here's a mat. Here is the object I'm paper macheing, and I'm going to go ahead and get my paper mache, which I have in a bowl here. This is a mixture of flour and water. So to begin paper macheing, I'm going to, again, make sure I have strips of paper that are about the right size I need for the part of my sculpture that I'm working on. So if I want to do the feet of this squirrel that I made, I might want to use even smaller strips than a strip this big. But because I'm going to start on the tail and the head, I think strips about this big are okay, and then I have some smaller ones available if I need them while I'm working. You want to go ahead and make sure you have enough paper torn, newspaper torn, before you start paper macheing, because once your hands get all gloppy with the paper mache, you're going to have to go and wash them off if you need to tear more paper. So try to get a good little pile of paper torn for yourself to work with before you get your hands messy with the paper mache. You're going to want to put 2 or 3 layers of paper mache over your entire form. This means you're not going to be able to do this all in one class. Like I said, you might only be able to do the bottom one day and the top one day, and then you're going to have to go back and do the bottom again and the top again to have at least 2 layers on your form. So today I'm just going to get started with this, and once it dries, I can go ahead and do more layers next week when I have class again. So I'm going to go ahead and start paper macheing. I'm going to go ahead and dip a strip of paper into the paper mache. Push it in there, and then I just use my fingers like this to get rid of the excess paper mache. I'm going to go ahead and lay that wet strip right on my form, and I can go ahead and lift it up and turn it around while I'm doing this and make sure that sticks. You can smooth it out with your fingers. Another way to lay down a strip is always to dip your finger in the paper mache and sort of use it like a paintbrush and paint the area you want to put your next strip down. So if I want to put a piece of newspaper here, I can dip my fingers in the mache, use it like a paintbrush, and then place my strip over that wet area I just put down, and then add more paper mache on top of the newspaper strip. So those are 2 different ways to apply your newspaper strips with the paper mache. So I'll go ahead and show you that technique with your fingers again so you can see it one more time. So again, dip it in your bowl of paper mache, and then you can use your fingers to squeegee off the extra liquid. and then go ahead and wrap that piece of paper mache strip where you want it. Now remember, when you're paper macheing, you want to lay down strips of paper in different directions. So I've done some strips of paper this way and some strips of newspaper this way on this tail of my squirrel. And I want to go ahead and start smoothing things out and looking for maybe some cracks. I could definitely put another strip in this direction over this crack. Look around, and maybe because I ended up putting some strips like this, I could put some strips like this to sort of seal it. So remember, your first layer, even though it's still only your first layer, it does have multiple pieces of newspaper strips crisscrossed. So you want to do for your first layer a couple strips in one direction and a couple strips in another direction, and that means you have one layer down. So I'm going to go ahead and keep adding more strips of newspaper to this tail until I make sure I have all areas covered in a crisscross manner. So right now I'm going to finish right here, and then I'm going to use smaller strips to paper mache the head of my squirrel. Now that you're done adding your strips of paper mache, you can go ahead and smooth out any areas that are bumpy. If you see any holes that have been formed while you've been handling your form, while you've been moving it around to paper mache different parts of it, go ahead and find any holes and patch them now. If it looks all good to you, the areas you've done today, go ahead and bring it to the counter and find something to lean it against. It'll be kind of top heavy. So I have a little plastic container. I'm going to put that down, and I'm going to lean my tail against that and then let my form dry until next week, when I can go ahead and keep adding layers of paper mache. Next time I will work on the bottom part of this squirrel. Happy art making!